I've recently read a book about Bronstein by Gena Sasonka, and there he describes the attitude of Bronstein, who, for those who don't know, was the World Chess Championship challenger and almost beat Botvinnik in their title match in the 1950s. The match ended in a draw, and Botvinnik retained the title, but he was this close to the title. Also succumbed to the psychological pressure in the couple of the last rounds and did not win. So Bronstein insists that you should play as much blitz as possible to be fluent in your openings, in some plans, schemes.
My guy.
Yeah. And another player who is more well-known currently is Hikaru Nakamura, who also probably has shown that playing a lot of online blitz can have a good impact on your classical. So what's your attitude towards that? I know that you are not just a practitioner of blitz and a very successful one of the best speed chess players worldwide, but you're also a theoretician. I've read your essays about blitz improvement on chess.com on your blog several years ago. So I know that you have a lot to say about this.
Definitely. I mean, and to be clear about, definitions, I mean, blitz nowadays is basically 3+0 online and 3+2 over the board. But we can lump, we can talk about bullets separately, but 5-minute chess, we're talking about just speed chess in general. Insofar as, the question of is blitz a necessary condition to improve at classical and sort of the modern era, or is it a necessary condition to limit or perhaps exclude regular blitz chess? I think it's neither. I don't think blitz inherently helps or hurts your classical development. I think it depends entirely on what your sort of stylistic profile looks like and to what extent blitz is hurting your ability to train and to do classical specific training. Of course, like this question, Greg, I think is inextricably linked to the bigger question of to what degree are blitz and classical similar? To what degree is the skill set? And of course, then we're getting into some other interesting topics, which we can avoid getting into them directly. But the larger philosophical question of is blitz and classical ultimately the same game? Like when you draw the Venn diagram, right? Blitz, classical, and then the skills that are interlinked. Of course, the rules of the game are the same. People understand that there are major differences, but do the similarities outweigh the differences? And my answer to this question is, well, I think that blitz and classical are extremely different games. And from my perspective, the fact that there is a large gap, for example, in my blitz level and my classical level, and a lot is made of that. A lot of people make this point to illustrate one of several things. And I'm not saying this from the perspective of self-defense. No, that doesn't interest me at all. We kind of agreed to avoid this topic. And if you think it's important, I'm happy to broach it. The topic of course, of cheating and paranoia. But to me, it's completely natural that a lot of players and particularly a lot of GMs will have a gap between their blitz level and their classical level, which is, I think, pretty easily explained by a couple of factors. And I promise that this will eventually tie into my answer of, does blitz help or hurt the development of perhaps the top players? Of course, there is the factor of time, which is crucial. And that defines a large percentage of the games, which you would lose in a classical game with increment. But because it's a blitz game, your decisions change completely. For instance, I might go into an endgame that I know is losing in a classical game, but in blitz, it's easily winning because your opponent has 30 seconds, you have 1 minute. Or I might sacrifice a piece because I know there's no way my opponent is going to figure out the complications. I cannot emphasize enough the extent to which that changes the game. Your entire pattern of decision-making as a good blitz player is tied into the clock situation all the time. And in a classical game, this is true throughout 5% of the game, maybe just in the time pressure stage, and even not really then because you're going to make time control and you can't rely entirely on the clock. Then, of course, there is the oversized factor of short calculation. I think that the short calculation is perhaps the single most important, along with pattern recognition and seeing quick tactics, is the single most important skill in blitz and particularly in bullet. I'm talking calculation of variations 2 to 3 moves in length. Mm-hmm. In classical chess, of course, that is extremely important, but In Classical, things are predicated much more on deeper calculation and pausing at the right moment for 5 to 10 minutes and calculating a wider range of variations. Whereas in Blitz, just short but accurate calculation, perhaps, which is the talent that I have, and the talent that I've kind of built a lot of my Classical career off of, becomes incredibly important. Deep positional reasoning in Classical is crucial. Making these small but significant positional decisions, such as Gukesh playing with like b4, right, in the last round against Hikaru.
Yeah.
And people can
Great move.
project this on the screen when we put out.
Yeah.
Amazing move. Such a move, which not preparation, I think, because he thought for quite some time on the previous move. On the previous move, he thought for 15 minutes. Still, preparation or not, such a deep approach to the position. In a Blitz game, doesn't matter at all. You play b4, you don't play b4. These small opening decisions or decisions in the early middle game do not matter one whit. You can play bishop b7 or knight c6 because neither player has nor the time nor the ability to exploit any of these subtle mistakes. And that is why just trying to predicate your Classical training on playing tons of Blitz and learning, using it to learn openings or get better at tactics. I mean, it helps to a narrow degree, but to a large extent, the type of training you have to do to improve these deeper 2,700 plus skills are completely different. So playing a lot of Blitz, I don't think it necessarily hurts. It'll hurt if you play all day, every day. I think it creates over time a more superficial surface level approach to the game. That's totally true. And I think this is one of my big problems when I do play Classical, and I don't really play Classical anymore, but this has been a problem throughout my career. Yes. The fact that I can just impulsively make a decision, not that I'm literally necessarily going to play too fast, but sometimes I'm so used to thinking of the position in Blitz terms that penetrating the surface layer becomes more difficult. And for top players, this is especially important, which is why you see, let's name this new generation: Noterbeck, Gukesh, Arjun Erigaisi, maybe even Pragnananda, Firouzja, of course, perhaps is the exception, although he doesn't play much anymore. None of those players play a lot online. They'll play a Title Tuesday here and there. They'll play a Blitz session here and there. All of them keep the amount of Blitz that they play under wraps. And even Hikaru, he plays a lot of Blitz, but Hikaru is as we say in Russian, unikum. Like he is one man in the entire world out of the 8 billion people we have living on this earth, or however many there are. And people constantly referencing Hikaru as an example of anything, that's automatically invalid. He is like a man with 4 arms. He is like, the only person in the world who possesses X skill. Hikaru is different from everybody, and we need to stop, I think, as a chess community saying, but what about Hikaru? Like, how can he make it happen? Hikaru is just someone who I have not seen an example of a player like him with his tendencies and his abilities, not just to juggle everything that he does, but to demonstrate the skill that he does in Classical and Blitz throughout his career. There's nobody like him, and trying to model your path of improvement on Hikaru is impossible. So to summarize, Greg, I think Blitz is its own game. The differences in skill set are vast, which doesn't make it surprising at all to me that in the sphere of online chess, there are many of these quote unquote outliers. And I think, frankly, it's ridiculous that people might look on this differently. Anybody with chess experience realizes that at his heart. And of course, there's the question of OTB Blitz versus online Blitz, separate topic as well. But no, I don't think Blitz is the path to serious improvement at the 2,700 level, which doesn't mean I'm going to play any less of it. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have a narrow range of helpful, of things that it helps with.